Our new partner who I'm really, really excited to announce we are working with. Super, super stoked. Thank you, Angie Huberman, for this connect. It's incredible. AG1 Athletic Greens. I've been using them for a while. I have them every morning on an empty stomach. Basically, take one scoop and you put it into a cup or glass or mug of 8 ounces of cold water. And this is all your greens for the day. You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. Every day I take this. It's so good for my digestion, my energy. It's simple. It's easy. I don't like taking a lot of vitamins. This has been really, really helpful for me. I've had a lot of stomach issues my whole life, and ever since I've been gluten-free and taking the AG1s, it's really helped me in my stomach in the mornings. I love it, and I'm so psyched that they're part of the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm sure a lot of people don't like eating greens, let alone drinking your greens, but I can tell you straight up, it's got a mild tropical taste, and the taste is actually really refreshing, and I really look forward to it each morning. Don't think it's just going to be just straight bland. It tastes really, really good, and it's good for you, so remember that. This one blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's incredible, just one scoop, especially for musicians who are vegans or just musicians in general who want to get those daily greens. You can get the packets. It's incredible. I just gave some to my friend Derek from Sepultura. He traveled the whole entire world this summer, and he had those every single day. He said it saved him. I bring AG1s with me when I travel. It helps me stay healthy. You know the deal. If you're on tour and you are a picky eater, but you need to have your greens, sometimes catering doesn't have greens. Sometimes you miss the catering. Sometimes you miss the backstage food. Sometimes it's too late after the show to go get food that you like. So if you just have a scoop of AG1s in your hotel room before you go to bed, or you're in the hotel room at night and you're starving, you want something healthy, boom, life changer. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with some convenient daily nutrition. That's all you need, one scoop in a cup every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. This is it. I'm super psyched. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit drinkag1.com/OLLC. That's drinkag1.com/OLLC. Take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. This is incredible. I love it. It's just basic greens. For me personally, this has changed my life tremendously. I'm not a junk food vegan. I don't eat a lot of fake meats, so I'm strictly greens. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful new addition to my life. So once again, visit drinkag1.com/OLLC. That's drinkag1.com/OLLC. Get 1 free year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. That's drinkag1.com/OLLC. Yo, Liquid Death, thank you so much for hydrating all my guests, taking care of me and my family and my friends. Love your water, love your brand, love what you stand for, love what you give back to the community. If you want to learn more about Liquid Death and how it started, listen to episode 115. With the co-founder, owner, and creator of Liquid Death, Mike Cesario. Just a punk rock skateboarding kid from Delaware with a dream. It's an incredible story, incredible journey. So if you go liquiddeath.com/Toby, you get free shipping on any items you order from liquiddeath.com. And if you want to get water, Liquid Death water, go to amazon.com. But for merchandise and other things that's not water, go to liquiddeath.com/Toby and get free shipping. Thank you so much, Liquid Death. Death to plastic, murder your thirst, stay hydrated. You know H2O saves lives. Welcome to the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm your host, Toby Morse. Today I have a very, very special guest, Mr. Frank Turner. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
We just met. We just went to Green Table. People know Green Table is the spot. Just catching up and getting to know each other more. And just, I don't know, I knew your name throughout, the past, over a decade, just hearing the name and a guy from the hardcore scene, but he has his own style, the music he performs, and it's not, you know what I mean, like how he grew up, and
sure,
you have the FT hardcore logo. I'm like, what is that? And just mutual friends and
yeah, totally. Well, I mean, also obviously I'm well aware of your work as well, so there's a lot of mutual respect in the building.
Thank you, man. We just played Riot Fest together last week. Well, you guys played Friday, right? We played Sunday.
Yeah, we had a late night show on a Friday, which was kind of brutal. Actually.
Club show?
Yeah, club show.
We did that too. We played like 11:45.
Yeah, exactly. It's
late,
just
man.
like nobody in the audience wanted to be there at that time. Nobody on the band wanted to be there at that time. It was a good show.
It was, but I was beefing so hard with our booking agent about, I don't want to do an after show. I don't want to do an after show, please. You got to do it. It's going to be fun. And it was fun. TSO all did it with us.
Oh, amazing.
But it's just so late, man.
Yeah, totally. And like we're all getting on in our time.
Who'd you play it with?
Our friends at a band called Rebuilder from Boston, who are an amazing punk band.
And was that Reggie's?
No, it was at Chop Shop.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
cool.
cool.
It was fun though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, good time.
And then you had the festival show, which I saw pictures
Had the
of.
festival show, which was awesome, went really well. I had a great day as well. I just got to hang out with some old friends, catch some bands that I like. I got to see Snapcase, which was
me
great.
Too. Yeah,
Hadn't seen
yeah.
them for a long time. I watched the first half of ICP, which was amazing.
I saw Corey Feldman.
Oh wow! I saw Corey Feldman walking around in a gold suit.
Sick.
And then I watched the back end of Mr. Bungle's set as well, and Corey Feldman was there.
He was watching them?
Yeah, for sure.
How was Mr. Bungle? They killed it.
Incredible. They finished with a Sepultura cover. It was, I mean, I love Sepultura, man. So like, it was so kind of left field. Do you know what I mean? It was like they played Territory by Sepultura, and they just kicked into it. And me and my guitar tech is one of my oldest friends, and we both looked at each other and we were like, I know this song. What is this song? And it's like, it wasn't kind of like a stunt cover. Do you know what I mean? There was no way that it could be like a cool, hip song to have covered. It was just like, we like this song, so we're playing this song.
Was that the only cover they did?
No, they did loads. They did like Tears for Fears, and like, it was wild. It was
so
good.
Corey was up there, and then you saw ICP. How was ICP?
ICP, so
I gotta see him someday.
I'm medium obsessed with ICP.
Okay.
I think that there's an argument
Secret
to be
Juggalo?
made. Well, I think there's an argument to be made that they're kind of the punkest band ever, despite not actually being a punk band.
Super DIY everything.
Insanely DIY, insanely community-minded. The way that their fan base operates, like the Juggalo community, they have things like healthcare fundraisers, parole outreach, like all this kind of thing. And everybody kind of looks down on them, which incidentally I think is slightly classist. There's a real sense of like, they're poor white people, so fuck them, which I think is distasteful. But also, it's like, they don't care. And like, to me, punk rock was always supposed to be about, we don't care what people think about us.
It's very true.
And if you want to meet a group of people who don't care what you think about them, that's Juggalos. I mean, you know,
and they played
also
the punk festival.
Yeah, exactly. And like, they've got a song called Fuck Your Rebel Flag. And it's pretty cool that they're playing that to their specific audience, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm not the biggest fan of the music, if I'm 100% honest with you. And like, I watched the first half of the show and there was a lot of Faygo being sprayed around.
I don't want to get sprayed, yeah.
A lot of big beats and stuff. It was very energetic, but like, I also wanted to watch Mr. Bungle, so. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting perspective on ICP, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know...
They're from Midwest, too, right? Detroit, yeah.
They're from Detroit. And I'm aware that while I'm talking about this, that I'm not an American, which I think gives me a slightly different perspective on it to some people, but not necessarily in a bad way.
No, but I like this perspective.
You know, and like, ultimately, like, I'm glad that it exists, and I hope they keep doing what they do.
Yeah, their own merch, their own record label.
Yeah, they run everything themselves, and they go platinum on every record they put out.
You think Faygo pays them?
I think they own Faygo. I'm not even joking. I'm pretty sure they own Faygo. Yeah. No, I think they own the company full stop.
Wow.
I think. I'm not 100%
Yeah, because
sure
I never heard of Faygo until of ICP. Like, I never heard ever.
I mean, if they don't own Faygo, they should own Faygo.
I know. I wonder why Faygo. Who knows? I have to talk to them someday. But then if they love that brand so much, yeah, you just buy us or something. Yeah, for sure.
Right, totally. But apparently, so you know, they have their festival every year called The Gathering.
Oh yeah, some friends have been to that. Yeah,
I want to play it like a lot, and like everyone says to me, like, man, that's a rough gig. You don't want to do that gig, and I'm like, nah, man, I reckon I could pull it off. I'm like bravado about this, and we have the same booking agent, me and ICP.
Oh my goodness.
I said to him I want to do it. He was like, I don't know if you want to do that, and I said I definitely want to do it. So we'll see. You're
putting out the atmosphere right now, in the world.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, like, no one drinks at the Gathering. They all just take ecstasy. And I was just like, okay, I can get with that.
Wow. Yeah, I have a friend, a really good friend who's on this podcast who's actually a Juggalo, and he's told me all about that world, that community.
But this is it. Like, from a kind of sociological point of view, it's the same as the hardcore community or the punk community. Except that in many ways, I think is doing a more effective job. You know, there seems to be a lot less kind of like backstabbing going on. I mean, although, let's be fair, I don't know enough about the internal politics of the Juggalo world to say that with any confidence.
That's true.
But like, you know, I don't know. I really
or
respect
judgmental.
It. Yeah.
Because as much as punk rock, for me, and probably you, is about being open-minded and accepting everyone, and we're all weirdos and freaks together, there's a lot of judgment that comes in the hardcore scene, and there's what's punk and what isn't. All that.
Right, there's a lot of rules kind of pop up. Every single time, rules pop up.
We talk about gatekeeping too when we eat into stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, Like, nobody owns the blueprint. Nobody is the one creator, and there's not one style or sound or look.
Very much so. And like ultimately, in a way, the fact that the Juggalo scene, more so than hardcore with Minor Threat or whatever, is just so specifically based around one band. It's kind of like, that's the only real gatekeeping you can do. Do you like ICP? Do you know what I mean?
There's no other bands under that kind of umbrella. There's
there are. There's loads, but ultimately, like those two guys, and I met Violent J, and he was a super nice dude. But like those two guys, they define what isn't in, and they seem like they've done a pretty inclusive job.
And what is that genre? There isn't one.
It's kind of like new metal rap.
I guess, but it's just called. It's just NSYNC. It's just them.
Yeah, totally.
Like
they've got complete creative freedom. And this is the other thing I was talking to a friend about at Riot Fest, actually. Was
so podcast dedicated to ICP, by the way.
Here we go. Tune in, Juggalos. But I just sort of feel like the other thing is that, like, and this is we can broaden the conversation here a bit. Something I've noticed in recent years. So I did my first tour 25 years ago. I did my first sort of solo tours about 20 years ago. And like at a certain point, the fact of having survived for that long makes you kind of inarguable, because you know, when you're kind of younger and you're starting out, whatever, people can throw brickbats at you and they can say that what you're doing isn't worthwhile, or that people don't care about it, or they shouldn't care about it, whatever. Yeah. The criticisms that might come your way. But at a certain point, if you've been doing something to a certain degree of success for more than 2 decades, people can say, I don't like this, which is a completely legitimate opinion to have about anything. True. But you can't say it's meritless or it's valueless, because self-evidently it isn't. And so the conversation I was having with my friend the other day was that, like, I feel like in recent years, ICP have kind of like pulled clear of the controversy around, or at least the kind of aesthetic controversy around them. They've been doing the same thing for like 25 years. Yeah. And like, so
it's not a gimmick. It's not flash in the pan. It's
and it's huge, and huge. Like and they're doing well, and like, good luck to them. Godspeed. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not ICP. More's the P. But you know, like, I've really kind of noticed of late that, like, I mean, the last record I put out was my 9th record, and it was kind of interesting, actually. The Enemy, which is a British music magazine, I'm sure you're familiar with. Yes. Who are famously quite bitchy. They kind of gave me this review that was a really, actually, for the first time, like, kind of a positive review, and it was just kind of like, he's been doing this for a long time, it's clearly working, this is a good record. And it was just kind of like, it was almost like they kind of like waved the white flag in my direction a little bit, and like, it was just like,
he's here to stay, he's here, this is,
do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, ultimately...
Had they reviewed your band before that?
Oh, yeah.
All bad, or?
Generally speaking, yes.
Do you let bad reviews and stuff like that bother you? Like, take it personally?
I would love to sit here and tell you that I don't.
Same.
But
we're sensitive humans, man,
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I mean, I think it's funny. I think there's a funny and this is another sort of punk rock thing, the idea that I don't care what anyone thinks about me. If you really delve down into that statement, it becomes kind of sociopathic at a certain level. Like, human beings are kind of socialized by at least some regard for what other people think of them.
True.
I think there's a balance to be struck ultimately. I mean, put it this way, I have one friend who genuinely doesn't care what anyone thinks about him, and I find him pretty intimidating in a funny way.
Me too.
Like, and there are days when it's actually not that cool hanging out with him. You know what I mean? But you know, I do think, nevertheless, like, so you have to, doing what we do for a living, you develop a thick skin. It's part of the job description.
You do, but we also are sensitive souls, and like, this is our love and our passion. I mean, we do take it personally when they make fun of the art we create, or whatever we create. We take it like, yo, really?
There's that weird imbalance that, like, you'll spend a year and a half kind of writing, rehearsing, recording, mixing, pressing a record that's 40 minutes long. And somebody spends 40 minutes listening to it and goes, nah. And you're just like, but my life. And you can't really complain about that, because that's just the nature of the beast. That's the game we all signed up for.
But how many of these people that criticize our music actually are musicians?
I think quite a lot of them I mean, the cliche is a lot of them are failed musicians. Yeah. But it's a funny thing, because, like, so we've got philosophical already. Look at us.
I love this shit. Yeah.
Like, you know, so one of the things, I had a brief moment in my career where I kind of slipped one toe over the line into the mainstream. Like, we did arena tours, like headliners in the UK, and we had a number one record.
Yeah, charted. Yeah.
We had a number one song on American radio in 2013. All this kind of thing. And one of the things that I realized then, which as a kid growing up with punk rock had never really occurred to me, is that the structural difference between underground and mainstream is very simple. What mainstream means is that your music is exposed to everyone with no filter. Like, if you're an underground band, 9 times out of 10, the people who encounter your music are the people who are looking for your kind of music.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which mean, and that doesn't mean that everyone's going to love you, of course.
Yeah.
But it means that, generally speaking, the people who encounter your art are kind of predisposed to it, at least on some level. And if you become quote unquote mainstream, what it means is that your music is being unfilteredly kind of pushed out to the general public.
Yeah.
And what that means is
it's kind
that
of forced on people?
not necessarily forced, but just for a lot of people whose
there's no story to it.
Yeah,
it just appears.
People whose kind of like exposure to art is more passive. Let's say that.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? They're just like,
Yeah.
I'll put the radio on, and I'm not criticizing anybody in any of this.
Yeah.
But what that means is that a lot of people who don't like your music and who are never going to like your music start hearing your music, and then they want to tell you about it, and that fucking sucks. Do you know, and particularly if you, because all that stuff happened to me on my 5th record, you know, so I had like a background in being an underground artist. And
which year was that again?
That was 2013. So a record called Tape Deck Heart. And it was and you know, and I feel like I've since kind of pulled my toe back across that line, and very happy about that. I am too. And it wasn't really a kind of conscious choice at the time either. It was just things went well, and then radio stations started playing my stuff a lot. So happy days. Never going to complain about that.
Did they continue to play music after that record with other albums?
Some places, but that was definitely the peak of my kind of radio years.
But then you charted #1 on UK Billboard.
Yeah, definitely.
FTHC.
That was more kind of like a kind of guerrilla campaign to kind of like fuck the charts almost. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it worked.
It did work.
Which was fun. And I'm really, so the last album I had was #1 in the UK, and I'm quite conflicted about it on some levels, because again, when I was like 16 and when I was a teenager, Britpop was in full flight, and I hated it at the time because it was very much the mainstream overbearing culture.
Was that Blur and stuff like that?
Blur, Oasis, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And like I'm now old enough to have gone back and reevaluated some of it, but it was so omnipresent and so forced on you as a kid that I really hated it because I was into punk rock. And like, so when I was a teenager, almost what defined my social group was we were the kind of people who didn't like any bands that were in the charts.
Yeah, on the radio, same.
Yeah, and then it was like, I just got a #1 record in the charts, and it's like, part of me was really stoked about that, and part of me really wasn't.
Punk rock guilt.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I guess for me in America, it was like Nirvana and Pearl Jam. I'm like, what is this shit? But then, fast forward to now, I love and appreciate it. Foo Fighters as well.
I think once you're able to kind of step back and kind of disentangle yourself from the kind of social mores and pressures that go with it. Like, talking about Blur and Oasis, like the real answer to Blur versus Oasis is Pulp. And like, I didn't really pay any attention to them when I was a kid because they were part of the enemy. Do you know what I mean? They were the bad guys. And now I listen to Pulp a lot. I think they're an incredible band. And like Gomez, and there's just all these amazing bands that I was just like refusing to engage with.
You were too punk for it. I was like, you had the blinders on.
Yeah, totally. And you know, it's just like, screw you guys, I'm going to go get another kind of bootleg Black Flag live record from '83.
What about Oasis? Are you a fan of Oasis now?
You know, the short answer to your question is no, but there is a more complicated answer. I think that they represent something interesting in British culture, and I think that they self-evidently had, in a way that I really respect, they had a mass appeal. Like, I think that they're
insane songwriters too.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get around the lyrics. I just think the lyrics are dreadful. But the melodies are amazing. Also, like, I mean, I think it's really important. It is culturally important that they were a working class band who took the world by storm, and they kind of did it on their own terms. And kind
of punk rock vibes, man, a little bit.
In places,
as far as their attitude and some of the stuff that they did, it wasn't.
Yeah, but I mean, certain strands of the punk rock DNA, they were more the kind of like Sid Vicious, Derby Crash kind of strand than they were the Ian MacKaye strand. Let's say that.
I wonder if they like punk or no. They probably know about it for sure.
They're definitely into the Pistols and stuff like that. Actually, funnily enough, I've never met anyone in Oasis, but I have a very close mutual friend who is a close mutual friend of Noel Gallagher's, and who will defend him as an individual until the sun goes down. So
okay, so he really knows him,
yeah.
But so this is gonna be an interesting answer. So no Coldplay for you?
Oh no, okay, right.
It's my favorite band of all time. One of my favorite.
See,
bands of all time.
well, I'm gonna stand on your side of the line. I'm not sure I'm quite as far on your side.
I have
of
like
the line.
tattoos, everything.
Fuck it.
I love them.
Amazing. I think I love. I mean, I don't want to sound like a prick. I love their first 2 records a lot.
That's fine.
There is a part of me that feels Okay, this is an answer to your question, but I'm enjoying this a lot because we're going deep on theory straight away. I put it to you that the most influential band of the late 20th century is U2. And the
Love
reason,
U2.
Yeah, I love U2, but they invented what I refer to as stadium indie. And what I mean by that is any type of music where essentially you've got four chords in the major key, you've got some instrument droning a fifth over the top of it, you've got a driving beat, and you've got soaring vocals. And that is Coldplay, and that's some bits of earlier Radiohead. But it's also Mumford & Sons, it's Kings of Leon. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously, that's why I say stadium indie. There's a template that U2 laid down, which has
Sure.
And indeed, it's some of my stuff. So I mean, I'm not being bitchy in saying any of this.
Yeah.
But so Coldplay are almost like the classic example of that, because I remember hearing Coldplay, and they, the band they reminded me of more than anybody else. The first time I heard Yellow was Mineral.
I don't even remember. I know the name, but I'm not the band.
So Mineral were one of my absolute foundation bands. They're they were the kind of like second wave emo thing out of along with like Promise Ring, Christie Front Drive, that kind of crew. And like the first time I heard Coldplay, I was like, this sounds like a tidied up Mineral. A better produced Mineral to me. And I kind of still maintain that that's true. and the other thing about... So Coldplay, I don't know about over here. In the UK, they've become the band that is kind of easy to kick and easy to hate.
They are, yeah.
Partly because they're so successful. But like...
Your girlfriend's favorite band, just stuff like that.
Yeah, which is so kind of sexist anyway. But like,
totally.
I think that like as a songwriter, if I had written the song Fix You, I would have taken myself out for dinner and I would have bought myself a nice meal and a bottle of wine. Do you know what I mean? I would have treated myself. Dude. That is an amazing song. And even their more recent stuff, like that song Higher Power that came out recently, the second it comes,
so catchy,
the second it's on the radio, you're like, first of all, that's Coldplay. And secondly, I'm now going to sing this for the next 3.5 weeks.
They got such amazing choruses and hooks. I mean, I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? And like, I feel like there is a strand of jealousy to some of the Coldplay hating, because there's something about the way that Chris Martin writes hooks that just feels so effortless. And as somebody who tries to write hooks for a living, it is kind of annoying. Do you know what I mean? You're just kind of like, yeah, cool. It's another Coldplay song that's just like the most catchy thing of all fucking time. Great.
I know. And
Thanks, bud.
Some of them sound the same, but there's always something. I do agree. They are like maybe this generation's U2 for sure.
Yeah, totally.
I'm sure they love U2 or something. I don't know. But U2 too. They were like super punk when they first came out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and the early records, Radio Free Europe and all that kind of stuff. Oh no, sorry, that's R.E.M. Sorry,
I was like, what is that?
I've crossed my
Unforgettable Fire, Boy, all those records.
Please send your complaints about my confusion about 80s indie.
But U2, man, they come from punk rock, big friends of Ramones, all that stuff. Like
yeah, totally. Oh, well, and the other thing about U2 is, again, like Bono's somebody who's kind of easy to knock, but the bottom line about Bono is that Bono has raised more money for charity than anybody listening to this podcast or on this podcast now and for the rest of time, unless you get Bono on this podcast. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, and there's something, that's worth something, actually.
Yeah.
And in a way, part of the reason people have a go at him is because he puts himself out there. He could quite easily just like live in a mansion and have a coke problem forever, and he'd get less shit. But would he have made a better impact on the world?
Yeah, he actually put his lyrics to like he really lives his lyrics. I would say those guys doing stuff.
Although now I'm now gonna blow your mind.
Let's go.
I want you to take a picture of how your world is now, because it's about to fall apart. The U2 are the biggest, most successful Christian band in history.
Did not know they were Christian.
You read interviews with them carefully. They're all their lyrics are Christian lyrics.
They're
not love songs. They're about Jesus.
This is facts?
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
I Can't Live Without You is a song about struggling with doubt, Christian doubt.
And nobody really knows this until now?
Well, they do. They kind of talk about it here and
say that. That's crazy, yeah.
But yeah, they're a Christian band. And ultimately, I'm not a Christian myself, but I mean, there's more than one way of being a Christian. And like, again, they have, to a large extent, kind of walked the walk. They've done incredible stuff in terms of raising money for the poor and unfortunate of the earth, or whatever.
Yeah, I never knew they were religious at all.
Very much so. Very much so.
Damn.
So I'm sorry.
It's okay. So were you born somewhere of West Asia?
I was born in the Middle East, but it's not nearly as exciting as it sounds.
It's Kingdom of Bahrain.
Bahrain, yeah. My dad had a job out there, and I was born out there, and I was there for about 6 months.
Oh, 6 months.
And I don't remember it at all. All it means is that I tend to get pulled over at American immigration because I have the word Muharraq in my passport, which is the name of the town I was born in.
No way.
And, well, you know, when
Wow.
it's not for any specific reasons, but it's when you got a guy who's bored
Yeah, for
at
sure.
immigration,
Yeah.
and they're just looking for a flag, something to kind of liven up the day. And
Some of those guys are nice too. Oh, you play guitar? You play that? I was in a band. Like,
you know,
you get lucky sometimes.
the immigration staff at Boston Airport know who I am.
Really?
They don't like give me a free pass or whatever, but like more often than not, when we fly into Logan from the UK,
Do you go there a lot or something? Boston?
Yeah, we had a lockup in Boston with our American equipment for a time.
Okay.
And so we'd always start and finish a tour in Boston. And I love Boston. Boston's amazing. But like, it got to the point where we'd fly in, they'd be like, "What's up, Frank?" And I'd just be like, "Is this appropriate? Like, is this a test? Are you gonna?"
You're lucky to get some people. Yeah, sometimes those guys are super stern.
Yeah,
like
you're about to put your finger up my ass. Like, where's this going?
So you were born there, you didn't hang out there, grew up there, nothing. Is this kind of the way you were born? And then you end up Is it Meanstoke, Hampshire?
Meanstoke is a tiny village.
Is it Meanstoke? It's called
Meonstoke.
Meonstoke. Yeah. And that's where you end up. That's where you moved.
That's where my folks moved, and I was there for a bit. But I got shipped off to a boarding school when I was 8 years old.
I know, it's crazy, man.
Which, I mean, we can get into if you want, but like basically, my dad was somebody with very kind of highfalutin social aspirations.
Gotcha.
Let's say that. I was certainly not a choice that I was consulted on, and even if I had been, I'm not sure an 8-year-old is really qualified to make that choice.
No.
I have
Summerfield.
That's the one. You've done your research.
In Oxford, yeah.
And it's funny because like there's definitely a sense in which I don't want to get too far into cod psychologizing myself.
Yeah.
But like that was kind of the end until like a few years ago of me having any real sense of like attachment to a place as home, which meant that when I kind of stumbled across DIY touring as a concept and living out of a van and blah, 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 A, it was appealing, and B, it was easy to move into because I was living out of a suitcase anyway.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid. So,
But going to that school was very traumatic for you, man, for sure. But also, we kind of found punk rock and other people into stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, I remember, we sort of mentioned briefly like Green Day and Dookie and that era. Like Nirvana, my first love was Iron Maiden. Fell in love with Iron Maiden just because I thought the shirts were cool.
You saw a friend's poster in his room or something.
This is the one. Yeah, we were playing Warhammer, like Dungeons and Dragons type stuff, and then his older brother had an Iron Maiden poster, and I thought it was cool.
And you asked your mom and parents to buy the Killers record.
Well, my dad. So I told my parents I got into this thing, and I was one of the kids who hadn't really got into anything to this point. So my parents were like, "Hooray!" And my dad got me a copy of Killers on cassette.
Pretty sick.
And gave it to me. And both of my parents still sort of regard that as their major era of my youth. I mean, I should say that like my parents discouraged me listening to music, playing in bands, going to shows. Like it was very much like, don't do this, don't listen to this music, don't. I was banned. I wasn't allowed to go to shows.
Were they like? They were strict or religious? Or what did they want you to do?
My mum's father was a priest.
Okay.
But my mum is Church of England, so it's kind of pretty milquetoast. It's not like evangelical or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I remember like the first music magazine, I went out and bought a copy of Crank that had Cannibal Corpse on the front cover, and when I was like 11, and my mum was like, "Nope." And then I wore. This was more.
That makes you want it more though, to check it out more.
Oh, totally. There were days when my school friends were like shoplifting pornographic magazines, and I was shoplifting Kerrang.
Wow.
And that kind of, and I remember like we got busted once, and the security guard sort of turns to me and was like, "You can buy that," and I was like, "Oh yeah."
Oh my god.
But so, and then, I mean, the other incident from my childhood which springs to mind, and this was definitely more provocative, was I wore a Crass t-shirt on Christmas Day one year that said, "Jesus died for his own sins, not mine."
Wow.
And my mum cried. And the thing is, now I don't have kids myself, lots of my friends do. Like, I'm now at an age, you reach an age where you start looking back on your childhood and going, "Oh, yeah, my parents had a point about some stuff."
Yes.
Like, I feel pretty bad about that. I thought it was the punkest motherfucker in the universe at the time.
Without your parents.
And now, I mean, it was pretty needlessly cruel, shall we say.
Like a Bad Religion shirt. Oh my god.
That's
yeah.
But even a Bad Religion shirt wouldn't have been as bad as the Crass one. I mean, there was something particularly kind of sharp about that.
Were you playing the piano too before you found Iron Maiden?
Briefly, yeah. I mean, I'm middle class, so I got piano lessons as a kid. That's what you do, right?
Yeah.
And I hated it, and I sucked at it. And And then I started listening to kind of Maiden, and then Megadeth, Sepultura, Pantera, all that kind of thing. And then
got a guitar.
Yeah, and then basically this guy at my school had this really fucking nice guitar that he got given for Christmas and that he didn't want, so he just left it in a cupboard in the school. And it was like a Les Paul Gold Top.
Wow.
And I was like, "Can I play that?" And he was like, "I don't care," because he was like this rich kid dickhead. But I mean, well, he wasn't a dickhead. He let me borrow his guitar.
True, but
his attitude towards
could care less. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal to him.
It's a nice guitar.
Yeah, so I started kind of like hammering away badly.
11 years old, around 11.
Around 11. Yeah.
Wow. And how were you in school?
I got a scholarship when I was 12 years old.
And studied with Prince Williams?
Yeah. Not really. I mean, we were in the same institution.
Yeah. But alongside of him, it was his friend. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But I was a scholarship kid.
Yeah.
Which my dad was ecstatic about because they couldn't have afforded to send me to that school if I hadn't got a scholarship. So, but I remember being pretty pissed off because he was clearly ecstatic for reasons that had had to do with everything apart from me as an individual, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I was a very bookish kid. I studied a lot. I read a lot. I mean, I'm still a total bookworm. I mean, I showed up here with a book today.
Yeah, you have a book here. That's awesome. What does a bookish kid means?
Just as in like
an American nerd.
Yeah, I guess. Although
nerd.
Yeah, book nerd.
Yeah.
I did well at school, and I got a place at the London School of Economics, which is a good university.
Yeah.
And I studied history, and I really cared about it. And like my tutor at my university, I was in punk bands and touring by the end of my university years. And she said to me, like, she was Polish dissident. She was incredible. We studied Central and Eastern European history. And she was like, "You must stop doing this ridiculous music and come and do your doctorate with me." And I was like, "Fuck no."
Were your parents bummed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It must be, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my mum stopped being bummed about 10 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
My dad, that's a complicated question.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like, whenever so this is a thing, and I'm going to try and phrase this in the best possible way, but like, I have friends who like, and particularly like friends in bands who's like, my dad put a guitar in my hand when I was born, and I've listened to records since I was a kid, which is of course what all of my music friends are doing, and I'm not having a go at that. But there's just a tiny part of the inside of me that's just kind of, first of all, I guess, kind of jealous in a way, but also it's just like my allegiance to, in concentric circles, like hardcore, punk rock, rock and roll music, underground culture, whichever one of those phrases we want to use, is really fierce because I had to fucking fight for it every step of the way. Not in a way that's, I'm not trying to over dramatize this.
No, but starting your house.
But it was like, it was a thing that I was told not to do, not to have, not to pay attention to by everyone. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even really I had like one friend, maybe two, who were into punk rock. Like, it was just, and it was just like, it's this thing that I had to sort of like fight a path towards at every stage, you know? And therefore I'm incredibly kind of loyal, I guess might be the word, and it's kind of funny when you get these, and a lot of these are my friends that I'm talking about, so again, I'm not trying to like cast aspersions, but they're just like, "Oh yeah, my dad played me a Ramones record when I was like 6." And I'm like, "Fuck you, man!" Like, I had to find out who the Ramones were.
I like one of the quotes you have. I love it's like, punk rock was like a life raft for you at that time.
Yes, definitely. And like,
I think for a lot of people, the timing and just different people's homes lives, and they found this music and these artists.
Well, my home life, I mean, sidebar, things were not good at my when I was at home, which wasn't very often with my dad and my mum. And then I hated my school, and I fucking hated everybody at my school, and I didn't want to be there. And I had issues with kind of self-harm and all this kind of thing when I was a teenager. And then it's like, and then the two, I mean, if I had to pick my punk rock signposts in life, I mean, Nirvana's number one because Kurt Cobain used the word punk in interviews a lot, and therefore I went, well, what's that?
That's cool.
The Pistols and the Clash then kind of come in, which was huge for me.
Of course.
And like, it's interesting. At the time, the Pistols were bigger than the Clash. Then over time, the Clash became bigger than the Pistols. But now, as of the last kind of 3 or 4 years, I'm back in the Pistols phase again.
Okay.
I'm definitely back on the Pistols team. Not that you have to choose.
No.
And then, Green Day and Dickie, but Out Come the Wolves. That was a record.
It's my favorite Rancid record. I've got tattooed him as my favorite record.
Me
of all
too.
time.
I have the
Oh,
ink
you
on my
do?
leg as well. Yeah.
Oh, shit,
But like, and like War's End, you know,
we're at the War's End.
yeah, well, so
Cover
went
song
into
by
his
Billy
room and
Bragg,
smashed
right?
it smashes Billy Ray records and that kind of thing.
Didn't
And it
want
was
to
just
hear
kind
that
of like,
communist lecture.
yeah, and it was like, but that was kind of about me at the time, in the way that great songs are when you're a teenager. It was like, that was my life writ large. And then finally, like Black Flag, because there was just something about the kind of the absolute pure distillation of rage on that.
Hard.
And you know, I like a lot of metal, but there's something about quite a lot of metal, the kind of the quote-unquote anger is slightly performative to me, or it's slightly kind of genre-dictated, should we say.
Yeah.
And there's something about like, you know, Police Story, Jealous Again, Nervous Breakdown, and stuff like that.
Incredible,
These songs
man.
are 40 seconds long, and they're just, there's nothing forced about it. It's just
No.
like total adolescent rage.
Rage.
Yeah, and
Anger,
and
yeah.
rejection and defiance in this way that I was just like, give me more.
It's
of
so
this.
real, man.
Yeah.
Fuck. I'll go back to one thing real quick. When I was, we used to hang at Rants a lot, and when I lived in New York, still great friends with them. They really helped my band. People know this in the pod. They got us signed. They believed in us. Anyway, when they would play Sammy, they would say, "Little Toby was up." They would dedicate it to say my name
Oh,
instead.
that's amazing.
And I just got goosebumps when you said that.
Yeah.
And also back to the book nerd shit, which I think about now as I had a shitty education, never got to go to college. My mom couldn't afford to send me to college.
Sure.
I was too punk for school. But then I think about you and how you're highly educated, read books all the time. Then I think about Milo, who's a scientist, and the singer for Bad Religion, who's a professor, and all that stuff. I think it's looking at it now, it's like it's amazing to have education and to read more. I wish I read more. I'm like an audiobook guy, but like just to say nerd stuff, I think that's I don't know, just that title is kind of mean.
Well,
so
totally,
I'm sorry about
but
that.
that's why I said bookish.
No, I know. But I'm that's what you say in England. I thought maybe it's different over here.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I try to be hyper aware of the fact that I had an extremely privileged education. Do you know what I mean? I really did, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of proud of it. Not proud of the fact of the education, but like, yeah, I read a lot, and like,
Yeah, I love that.
I never gave a fuck about anyone calling me a nerd. Like,
Yeah.
fuck off, man.
And I'm going to apologize to call you nerd. And I'm
No,
also,
it's my
and I'm
skin
also
is
going to
thick.
say, like, there's also this whole thing of punk rock where it's like, well, now I know obviously you're super smart and educated, but you also had a rough childhood. So there's a thing about like punk rock where like you can't come from money, you have to have a rough life, you can't be educated, fuck school, fuck the government, fuck everything. But no, actually, that's not true at all.
I think that ultimately what it demonstrates, I'm aware that there are people who disagree with what I'm about to say, and that might be legitimate. But like, to me, punk rock isn't about. Well, I'm going to quote my own lyrics. Fuck you. It's not about where you're from. It's about where you're heading. Do you know what I mean?
Love
And
that.
it's like the whole point. The reason that things like kind of gatekeeping in the punk rock community piss me off so much is that like the whole fucking point of it to me as a kid was that it was this refuge. It was a place you could go if you weren't welcome anywhere else.
100%.
You know what I mean? And like I was, to move the story on a little bit, you know, I get into all these bands, and then I remember so my first hardcore show, I went, you're going to love this, you're about to shit yourself. I went to see, it was at the Garage in London. It was Agnostic Front, Vision, Maximum Penalty, Morning Again on the 8th of December, 1997. And
Wow.
I still have the ticket stub.
No way. That's a
That day
sick
changed my fucking
lineup.
life. Part of the reason it changed my life was because it was like I'd been listening to all these kind of bands that had now broken up. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, these bands are here and real. And then there was a distro table. Remember that shit?
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know, and there was guys with like suitcase full of CDs, and I got flyers for London hardcore shows from London hardcore bands playing. And there's a band called Knuckle Dust who...
Yes, I know. Yeah.
So they're like, I often refer to them as my Black Flag.
Okay.
Because like I saw them a million times, and I mean, they're still going.
Still going. Yeah.
I actually, the singer kind of kicked the fuck out of me one time. That's another story entirely. But I still, you know, their early records, those early shows, that was insanely formative for me.
It's
and
a sick first hardcore show. Wow.
Yeah,
Maximum
yeah.
Penalty too. Wow.
And and that just the realization that punk was, because up to that point, punk was something I read about in books and listened to records, and it was a little bit like my schoolwork, it was sort of academic, it was theoretical and the rest of it, and it was like, motherfucker, this shit is happening now. And so I started bunking off my boarding school as much as I could. I just basically stopped going and just went. I had, there were various squats where you could crash. I had a friend in London whose parents didn't really care, so and I just went to shows as much as I possibly could. Like within 6 months, I've formed a band, put out a record, put out a zine, started putting on shows, all this kind of business.
After doing that, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And just lost my mind. You know what I mean? And indeed got my first tattoo, which is a UKHC tattoo on my top left arm.
That's your first one?
Yeah, I was 16. Wow. Not supposed to do that.
Did your parents know you got tatted?
No, my parents. I'm gonna blow your mind. My second tattoo is a straight edge tattoo.
What?
It's an inside out tattoo.
Still have it?
No spiritual surrender.
No spiritual surrender.
With
wow.
2 little black X's in courier font because it was the 90s.
That's so cool.
I don't really believe in tattoo cover ups personally. I feel like I did it.
Did you ever meet Zach?
Huh?
You ever meet Zach?
Never met Zach. But like,
that's a cool tattoo. Wow.
Yeah. So like, and I had my first 2 tattoos. I got them when I was 16, 17. And I had them for 5 years before my parents knew.
Before they saw them?
Yeah. I mean, partly, like I say, I wasn't really at home all that much.
Did they kind of freak out on you?
So it was my mum's 50th birthday, and we went on a family holiday together to a beach place, and I couldn't not take my shirt.
Can't cover them up.
Yeah, so I took them off. I was like, fuck it, I've had them 5 years now, and I'm 21, man, so like I'm fully grown. And I took my shirt off, and my mum burst into tears and said, I spent 9 months making that skin.
My mom was like that too. You're pure, your skin, but why'd you do that? I was so pissed.
Yeah.
I got letters from my grandparents that begged me to stop getting tattooed when I moved to New York.
Didn't work, man.
Now, was your first band Knee Jerk?
Knee Jerk, well... I don't know, how deep are we going here? Knee Jerk was the first band of mine that like played shows.
Okay.
I was in a couple of other bands. I mean, one of them was just a bedroom band with my friends. We, when I was 11 and first started playing guitar, me and a couple of friends started fucking around in my friend's bedroom. He had a drum kit, and on school holidays we'd go and play AC/DC covers and stuff. And,
that's cool.
AC/DC and Nirvana. I mean, we wanted to do Megadeth, but we were completely incapable of playing that kind of stuff. And then I think we probably did some songs off Dookie as well, as time went by. And then I was in a sort of like, Knee Jerk was kind of like a sort of self-consciously, we were into stuff like Cave In and Refused.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Kind of Lodestars. Knee Jerk had a former incarnation that was more like pop punk, but we were completely and utterly, unforgivably, god-awfully bad.
Is that Million Dead?
No, that was after.
Okay.
But then, so Knee Jerk, was the first band I was in that like DIY, but like released music.
Yeah.
And we toured. We did my first tour in the summer of '98. We did 2 weeks around the UK. We did the kind of book your own fucking life thing. The UK version of there was a zine called Fracture in the UK that had a BYOL section, and we booked a 2-week tour in the summer of '98, and no one came. And it was rad. I had
so fun, I bet too. Yeah.
The one show that where people came to was this really formative day for me. We were playing. There used to be a squat in Leeds called 120 Rats. Okay. It was this legendary like crust punk squat.
It's a hard name.
And we got booked to play there, and it was me and my band and this other band. We were all like 16, 17, 18 maybe. And then we had this guy who was driving us who was old enough to rent a van. And we got to the venue, and they put our 2 bands on, first 2 on, and then 2 other bands who were touring together headlining, which was Arsehole Parade and End of the Century Party. So 2 American kind of power violence, blast beaty kind of bands, both of whom I fucking love. Okay. Both of those bands broke up in the car park that night in this gigantic fucking 8-way screaming match.
No way.
And we were like 16 and sat in our van just being like, what the fuck? And then we also found out the squat, which like I say is a proper like crust punk, like, hardcore dog on a string, yellow mohawk type dudes.
Yeah.
It was being demolished the following morning. So people were literally, as the bands were playing, were like sledgehammering holes in the walls and like ripping doors. They were like destroying the building as we played in it.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking, I think my parents were right. Maybe I want to go home. This is kind of a bit much.
It was scary.
But yeah, so we toured and did stuff back then with that band, and so ultimately, yes, that was my first problem.
Were you into like the squatter scene too? Is that kind of
tangentially? I was never like a full-time squatter. I spent one spring school holiday squatting because my dad kicked me out of the house. we'd have like 3 weeks off school. And I didn't go home. So I stayed in a squat in Tufnell Park in North London, which was like a black bloc squat, like hardcore anarchist thing. But my uncle, who is my dad's twin brother, who's like my kind of consolation prize dad when I was a kid, we were very close. He passed away a few years ago. But his house was kind of 3 or 4 blocks away from the squat, so I'd sort of wait until no one was looking, and I'd run over and have a proper meal and a shower, and then like muss my hair up again and come back. This is I was like 18 at this point. I'd come back and all the other guys would be like, "You smell clean." And I'd be like, "No, man, no."
Oh my god, man.
Yeah. So.
So then what about? So you start doing bands and you stopped.
Yeah, started doing bands.
Shows.
And basically
putting on shows.
I left school and Knee Jerk broke up when I left school. And then the drummer from Knee Jerk,
Ben Dawson,
the great Ben Dawson. He was, to recount the story, I was living in London and just kind of working shitty kind of temp jobs and stuff, and just going to shows and buying records, and was kind of directionless, to be honest. And then I had been in a band with Ben, and then he formed a band with 2 people he met at his work. He works in a record store, who were both kind of like 6-7 years older than us, and they were Australians, and they were into stuff like Queens of the Stone Age when they first came out, and like Hot Snakes, and that sort of territory, and which I was less familiar with at the time. And I thought that they were just a 3-piece band, and I had nothing to do, and I had no money, and they were like, "Hey, we've got band rehearsal tonight. Do you want to come and hang out?" I was like, fuck it, it's something to do with an evening. And I went down, and it turns out they didn't have a singer, and the whole thing was a fucking setup, and there was a microphone on a stand waiting for me, and they were all just like, yeah, want to give it a go? So I did, and Ben thought it was great because we'd been in a band together, and the other 2 thought I was terrible, and we were like, absolutely not that guy. Because basically they wanted somebody to sound like Josh Homme, and I went in like Dennis Ligson.
Nice.
Rap kind of thing. And those 2 were just like, what the fuck is this horrible noise? And then basically I just sort of hung around them for a few months until eventually they didn't get anyone else. And then like I had like a 4-track machine, and I kind of recorded a demo, and then I ran off and like bounced the 4 tracks down to one and put some vocals over it and kind of gave it back to them, and they were like, fine, you're in the fucking band.
Wow.
And then that's how Melinda started.
Did that last for a couple of years? Like you guys touring, put records out?
Yeah. So that was it was an interesting. The thing about the band, it was kind of like a culture clash in many ways. In ways that were productive, but also meant that we weren't long lived. So like there was me and Ben who grew up with the hardcore scene, and that was our thing. And all the first shows we played were kind of like squat shows and stuff that we had been doing with Knee Jerk.
Yeah.
Julia, our bass player, like she worked as an intern at a major label, and she knew what a booking agent was and what a manager did, and she understood the music industry, and she had ambitions to be part of the music industry. And as I say, there was this kind of sleaze rock kind of vibe thing over here, and then me and Ben were into kind of like political, technical hardcore, and somehow in the midst of all of this, we came up with something. And actually it was the 20th anniversary of our debut album coming out like a few weeks ago, and I listened to it for the first time in a long time, which was really lovely actually, because it's long enough ago now that I can listen to it with some distance. And like that came out in 2003, and there was the sort of British version of the kind of mainstream emo thing was going on at the time, with 100 Reasons, Funeral for a Friend, Helen's for Heroes, those kinds of bands, all of them wonderful people, great bands, but like we never really felt like we had anything in common with them musically, but they were around at the time, so we toured with all of them. And we sort of therefore post-hardcore band or whatever. I always thought we were just a hardcore band, and I think that Cameron, our guitarist in particular, would have been horrified at the suggestion we were a hardcore band, and I think he thought we were a rock and roll band kind of thing. But like so it just ended up being this really weird mishmash of different stuff going on, and I'm really proud of the music we made, because I think it's individual. I was going to say unique, but that's probably too strong. I mean, we were definitely obsessed with that, the drive-in you can hear now. I think that was the brand that kind of brought us all together, them and Fugazi or whatever. Best. But I'm proud of what we did back then. We did 2 records. We toured. We were together for about 4.5 years. It fell apart in the end. Relations broke down basically between us. We were doing long tours in small vans with no crew, no money.
Were you just doing music, or were you working jobs when you came home?
Well, for most of the time I was working kind of crappy telesales jobs in between tours, that the usual shit.
Telemarketing stuff.
Yeah. And that sucked. I had a great gig for a while. My sister had an office job, and she got to hire temps, and so she hired me when
Come
I
and go
on
as you
tour.
please, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Did you have aspirations to be a musician at that point?
Oh, yeah, totally.
All I want to do, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't working on doing anything else with my life. And then, so basically towards the end of Million Dead, I had this moment in time where it was like, I was paying rent on a flat in London, and I was never there. And I was like, it's a fucking waste of time. And I was like, I started getting crew jobs for other bands. So I would like sell merch for a band, or do guitar teching for a band or whatever. All, still pretty, this is more kind of like the rock scene than the hardcore scene at this point. But like, bands that we were friends with or whatever. So there's a band called Reuben. I did merch for them for fucking ages. And we'd almost like coordinate our tours. Because basically I had this moment where I just sold a bunch of my shit, put some of it in the attic at my mom's house, and then was like, fuck it, I'm a free agent. I'm going to live on tour for the rest of my life. Hooray.
Wow.
And that was in...
How old are you then? Yeah.
That was 2004, so I was like 22 at that point.
Yeah.
And then the band broke up like 6 months later. And that sucked.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is some sort of formativeness in this, in the sense that like I'd had this idea of playing an acoustic guitar. I did a show number 1, which was 19 years ago yesterday. I count my shows.
Wow.
Last night's show was show number 2,815, and show number 1 was 19 years ago to the day. Is the 18th
It's
September.
like Rain Man style. That's
dates,
amazing.
Yeah.
You gonna write it down somewhere or no?
Yeah, I've got a list on my website. I've got every show I've ever done on my website. So
how many shows total?
2,815 under my name. Million did 256. And then Knee Jerk, I'm not entirely sure because I wasn't counting back then, and I've been trying to reconstruct it.
I'm sure it's driving you crazy. Yeah,
it really fucking is. Not least because like it's all of this is on my website if anyone wants to read
that
it.
Is so
I found
amazing.
a flyer, and this is so 90s hardcore. I found a flyer for a Knee Jerk tour that has the list of dates, some of which kind of cross-reference with other flyers I found. I was like, cool, that show definitely happened. And then like one of the dates on the tour is like Manchester venue TBC. And I'm like, God damn it. I can't remember if we did a Manchester show or if we just didn't do one, or if we did where it was, or if it was in someone's fucking house.
Wow.
And that kind of bugs me, as you might
I wish I knew how many
gathering.
shows you played. That's incredible.
The
man.
thing
I
is,
wish
like,
I did that.
Yeah, everybody does. And like, the thing is, I didn't start this. It was Ben Dawson who you mentioned. He counted the Million Dead shows, and I thought he was out of his fucking mind. And then when the band broke up, I was really stoked that he'd done it because there was a record.
Yeah. That's incredible. Did you journal on tour too?
Not really, no. I did for a time, but I was kind of doing it because Henry Rollins does, and I thought I should probably do that too. And then after a while, I was like, nah, you're right. But yeah, so anyway, so I'd done these couple of acoustic shows here and there. I'd started listening to a lot of country and folk music and stuff like that, and
Springsteen.
And Springsteen, yeah, that was certainly part of it. That's slightly become part of the kind of press pack myth.
Yeah, I guess.
More so than it needs to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan, and Nebraska and Devils and Dust and Ghost of Tom Joad were signpost records for me. But I would say the Johnny Cash American Recordings thing, that was kind of like the first, because this is the thing, because my parents don't listen to any music past 1900, basically. And my older sister got me into Levelers, Counting Crows, and Soul Asylum, I think.
Nice.
And Tori Amos as well.
Amazing.
Stuff like that. But I was a total autodidact when it came to my music, essentially, all of that stuff aside. And what that meant was that I heard and could sing you all the words to the song Bob Dylan wrote propaganda songs by the Minutemen before I'd ever heard a single song by Bob Dylan.
Gotcha.
And like, so in my kind of towards the end of Million Dead's time, I started basically educating myself, and I started listening to Neil Young and was like, motherfucker, this guy's, has anyone heard this guy? And everyone's like, yes.
Pretty punk.
Yeah, totally.
Same with Johnny Cash, yeah.
Yeah, Johnny Cash, Bruce Springsteen, Ryan Adams, Heartbreaker, all that kind of stuff. And this was all new to me. It was totally fucking new to me. And it was like so... I even just did shit like sat down and listened to the entire Beatles discography from the top to the bottom because I hadn't yet.
You never even cared about it because you're punk, like whatever. It's mainstream, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and then this kind of like this. So the reason I'm bringing this up now is that this whole thing of having sold all my shit and moved out of the house, it was like I felt pretty let down by the way the band ended. Yep. Incidentally, I'm old enough now to recognize that it was as much my fault as anybody else's. But at the time, I was like, they fucked me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to depend on anybody else. I kind of had to keep touring because I didn't have anywhere else to go. And then it was like, fuck, man, I can play a show on my own with an acoustic guitar. I'm completely self-contained, both logistically and kind of emotionally. Do you know what I mean?
Just counting yourself, that's it.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And so basically with Million Dead, we sort of agreed to break up a few months before we did. So I just started doing solo touring. Then we did a farewell tour. And then I just rolled straight into touring on my own. And I did about 3 years of touring on the train in the UK because I only learned to drive 5 years ago, which makes Americans lose their minds. But
you only what?
Learned to drive about 5 years ago.
Wow.
Because I lived in London for most of my life. So
how old are you now?
41.
I started driving at, you're going to trip on this too then, at 36.
The same as me.
I moved
exact
here
same.
From New York. I never driven my whole life.
It's the exact same
and
thing.
I hate driving at this moment.
I hate driving in LA, but I like driving.
I sold my car 2 years ago, and I got my son a car. I walk, I jog, I take scooters, I skateboard. I act like I live in New York City still, and I stay in my little world. I brought you to one of the spots.
Sure.
I never had driven. When you get older, it seems like it's more stressful to drive. I don't know.
I like a long cross country drive.
Okay.
And I like driving on my own.
Okay.
Don't tell my wife I said that. But you're in charge of the stereo.
So you didn't start driving too late. I respect that. Yeah.
But so all that early touring, I got to know the British train system incredibly well. I learned to hate it with a particularly sort of precise degree of hatred. But and I that first sort of 2-3 years, like I played fucking anywhere and everywhere, like people's bedrooms, student university halls, squats, bars, venues. Opening at times, like opening for bands who I've been friends with from the Million Dead days and stuff like that. There was, because Million Dead, like the biggest show we ever played, we sold 800 tickets in London, and that was our farewell show. And so we weren't nothing, but it's not like we were fucking the Arctic Monkeys, you know what I mean? Like so and so there was and then I chose to play this radically different style of music. In fairness, I think there's probably more commonality. There was more of a common thread between the two because it's still me singing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the time I would just regarded it as a 100% clean break, and I still went into it with the expectation that nobody who liked Million Dead would like what I was doing now. Some people did, actually. But yeah, so I just did all this touring and it sort of snowballed, but there was a sense in which I kind of reset to zero. 800 people at the last show. My first London show we played, we had 2 people, solo show.
Wow.
So there was a learning curve there.
So was it like I don't want to fail, I don't want to give up, I want to play music this is all I want to do, I want to prove myself, everything.
The thing that's weird about it, right, is
I don't want to work a real job, anything.
Yeah, all of that was kind of part of it, but like essentially at the time when I started doing this at the very beginnings of my solo career, I was like on a mission, and all my friends thought I had lost my fucking mind, and because it worked out. Because it worked out, looking back, all my friends now think I must have known exactly what I was doing, and I look back and think I must have lost my fucking mind. Yeah, we've switched completely. I genuinely find it quite hard to think myself back into that mindset. I think my mum, when my band broke up, was like, "Phew, he'll go and get a real job now," and then I didn't. It's not even that I didn't get a job. I went and did an even more DIY version of what I've been doing before, and I think my mum shit the bed.
Harder.
Yeah, made it harder and did it on my own, and like I wasn't
to prove you could do it.
Kind of, but I think the thing that I'm kind of blowing my own trumpet here, so forgive me that, but like the one thing I can think of is that like I was in this really, really pure way that you can only be quite this pure when you're young. I was following my art. Yeah. I had a thing to say and a way of saying it.
Of course, yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to communicate that with the world. And of course I didn't want to stop. I loved touring. I didn't want to go home. I didn't particularly have a home to go to and blah, 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 blah. But the driving force was that I was just writing these songs.
Yeah, things you want to say and talk about to the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was playing because later period Million Dead we got pretty complicated and we were never quite Dillinger Escape Plan, but and like the lyrics got pretty sort of obtuse, deliberately obtuse, and all the rest of it. And then suddenly it was like, I'm going to tell a story over 3 chords. And that felt so punk to me. It felt terrifying and it felt sort of like liberating. And a lot of that, there was a bar I started staying at in London in between tours called Nambuka, and there was a scene around there, and it was my buddy Jay who's playing on Saturday with me in Anaheim. Like, awesome. And Mumford & Sons are one of the bands who are there. Laura Marling, Jamie T, Christy T, all these kind of people. There was a sort of folk scene, and I was the punk kid on the folk scene.
Yeah.
But it was just like they were playing these 3-chord songs about what we all did last weekend. And like it was a very, very heavy chemical scene. Like we were all on a shitload of drugs.
Okay.
But I mean, remember one of my friend Jay, Beans on Toast, he goes by. We had this completely demented evening, sort of weekend that had featured quite a lot of acid. And then the following Friday, he played a new song about last weekend, and it was just like,
wow.
Fuck, man! You don't have to spend 6 months writing complicated metaphors about Polish communism for your lyrics. Like this can just be. It's that immediate. It's a community communicating with itself. That's what punk rock was supposed to be.
For sure.
So that was another major kind of driving factor.
Yeah. Were you partying hard before that, or just when you got solo?
Kind of. I mean, so I was straight edge from...
Yeah.
So before I was straight edge, I did a fair amount of drugs. When I was
young age?
13, 14, 15. I look back now. I find it hard to understand why 15-year-olds would do speed, given that you're kind of on speed when you're 15 anyway, by nature of existing. But speed and glue and smoking weed and all that kind of thing. I say smoking weed, smoking hash, which I'm reasonably sure, looking back, was actually moldy car tires that my friend's older brother was selling us.
Nice.
Which made you feel weird.
Yeah.
But
so speed, hash, no coke, kind of nothing like that.
No, that hadn't come on my radar when I was 15 or whatever. Then I discovered Minor Threat and Earth Crisis and was like,
sick,
cool, I've got an identity. And also, I wasn't part of a straight edge crew. I didn't know anyone else who was straight edge. I was just straight edge.
It was just you. Wow.
And then
so how old are you then when you stop everything?
It was 16.
Okay.
And then I had a miserably awful and protracted breakup when I was about 21 and started drinking again. And then in pretty short order kind of got into other things as well, and I essentially had a very long and often extremely destructive relationship with uppers, broadly writ. So powders and pills.
Powders and pills.
And like... sometimes it was fun.
It's hardcore. I heard, like, the come down from that. Like, the night is great. The next morning is just like
I'd go for
dark.
I'd just stay up for like 5 days at a time, kind of thing, like, all that kind of business. Do you know the Hold Steady? You know that band?
I know the name. Yeah,
they're one of my favorite bands for many different reasons. But there's a lyric on. Well, the first time I heard their third record, Boys and Girls in America, which is their masterpiece.
Okay.
There's a lyric in it where Craig, who's since become a friend of mine, I'm pleased to say, but he just sings the line, it started recreational and it ended kind of medical. And it just broke my heart. Again, it was like listening to Black Flag when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was like somebody was like, this song is about you. And
wow.
There was definitely a moment when this is the thing when talking about drugs. Like, I mean, first of all, I happen to be pro legalization of everything because drugs win war on drugs, as the Onion headline had it.
Yeah.
Anti-drugs laws made no impact on my ability to get drugs throughout my entire career as a drug addict. So go figure. But it just made them less safe, and it made me hang out with some shitty fucking people and get in some horrible fucking situations and probably put some other chemicals in my body I didn't need to.
Yeah, there's people that probably really with your friends just connected by drugs and just partying together.
Totally.
Yeah.
But like, so the beginnings of all that were fun. I had the best times of my fucking life. My God. About the first sort of 10 times I did ecstasy, it will remain some of my favorite memories for the rest of my life. Problem with it is I did so much ecstasy that I sort of killed that part of my brain as far as I can tell.
Wow.
And then I did a lot of cocaine and a lot of other drugs as well. And I'm broadly speaking shot of that for the time being, which I think is important to kind of caveat that. I have no intention of going back to it.
Yeah, how long have you been sober for from it now?
I'm not sober, as in that I drink alcohol.
Okay,
yeah. But I mean, like last night I had half a glass of wine.
Wow. You're going hard.
I know, crazy shit. And then I was like, man, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And I went to bed.
Older. Yeah.
But like,
But coke, long time.
4 years.
Okay, still, man. Congrats. Yeah, man. That's. Is that hard? It's hard to quit.
It was hard to quit. I had the wonderful bonus of my then partner, now wife, but then girlfriend, now wife, essentially going, "Fuck you, no."
Oh, she's still with you?
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's a real one.
Well, we had this moment in time a few years ago when we've been together for 8 years. Early doors.
What's her name?
Jess.
Shout out to Jess, man.
Yeah, and also she's just finishing her doctorate in counseling psychotherapy, which means that I lose all of the arguments that we ever had, which was always true. But now she tells me why I lost afterwards. But like,
amazing.
She, there was a moment early on in our relationship where she kind of said it's me or the drugs, and I went the drugs, and then she left, and I went no wait, that was the wrong answer.
Oh, shit. Wow.
And it took me a good 6 months to kind of re-ingratiate myself with her.
She's the one, man. She came back. That's awesome, man. Yeah.
But like, you know, I remember having a conversation because she's not somebody who's never done drugs, but it wasn't how it was with me. And I remember having a conversation with her one time, of just sort of saying, and this one I hadn't done coke for a couple of years. It was like, I think about doing cocaine probably 6 or 7 times a day. And like, when I say think about it, I mean, I think about the mechanics. I think like if I walk into a hotel room, I scan. If I walk into a bathroom, I check it out for how does the door lock? Is there a flat surface? Is it clean? Can I wipe it down? Am I going to need to flush while I snort? Like, how's this going to work? Do you know
to this day?
Oh, yeah. Fuck yeah.
Wow.
Dude, this is a nice tabletop you got here.
It looks pretty good. I just thought about that. Taking a marble table.
Yeah, but this is the thing about hotel rooms. Hotel rooms the world over are designed for taking cocaine in. You know, lots of long,
through
flat
your eyes,
marble
but other people, it's
surfaces.
just a hotel. Yeah, that's interesting.
So, you know.
So it's a struggle.
I have my routines and systems in place these days. I mean, the last few times anybody's offered me any, I've just been like, fuck no, dude. And it's not a massive problem. But, you know, life throws brickbats. So.
You got friends who were still on it that we were on it back then, probably, or no?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, as I'm sure people know, there's nothing more boring than hanging out with somebody who's on cocaine if you're not on cocaine too. Okay. It is the single most tedious thing in the whole world, and I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to everybody who ever hung out with me when I was high and they weren't high, because Jesus, God in heaven. But like, so, you know, I think my friends know that I don't do it anymore. Let's say that. Yeah.
Is writing music different?
I never wrote music when I was fucked up.
Okay.
I write music about getting fucked up.
Okay.
Often, and in some ways I still do from time to time. But I sort of don't really buy the idea that drugs help creativity. I think drugs can help with some things. And one of the things that help with is getting completely out of your fucking mind. And I think there's a place for that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to sit here and say I've gone on my last bender of any kind. I don't want to do coke again, but like, do I want to just go completely out of fucking bananas for a few days? Yeah, maybe I do. The problem is now, of course, that it hurts for so long afterwards now.
Right.
But like,
what about? Sorry, Cara. What about like? We don't have to talk about it, but even like, I'll say we can edit if you want to, but they call it like cocaine dick. Like even like trying to have sex when you're on drugs, it affects everything, that your sex life, all that shit. Or the opposite.
Sometimes.
Okay.
It depends what you're
Because some people say it makes you stay up all night like that, or some people say you can't do anything. But I heard things that they call it that.
It varies from person to person. It varies from supplier to supplier, and it varies what other drugs you're taking it with. But it can affect obviously that kind of life and all the other life. Yeah. But I mean, as I say, I used to just go on these like dates. So when Jess and I first met, like I went out for a beer one night and came home like 4 days later, and she was just like, "What the fuck?"
Wow.
And I was like, "What? Have I been gone?" kind of thing. Like, I mean, I knew I had. Obviously, I was playing in.
And then what do you balance that with when you come down? Then you have to get something to get back to level yourself out, right?
Kind of. I mean, the other thing is that like essentially.
So I never tried anything. I just listen to people's experiences.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the other problem, things went pretty south with me for all of that because essentially I was on tour. I never really did it on tour, and for a long time, for a decade or more, I would tour so much and I'd have like 4 days off, and I'd come home and I'd get high for 3 days and then sleep it off, and then I'd go back on tour again. Happy days. And actually, if you're in your 20s, I don't personally think there's anything particularly wrong or unhealthy about that myself. Because it was self-contained. Okay. And then essentially in my kind of 30s when my music career was going better and I had more money, and that meant also that there was kind of more time off between tours. And I remember kind of like coming home after a really long tour, and we'd like just had my first gold record come out and all this kind of thing. And I got home and I did my standard 3-day get on it with my home friends, and then I slept it off. And then I was like, I'm still at home. Well, I'll start again then. And just sort of went back into it because that's what I did when I wasn't on tour. And then suddenly it was like I didn't have a limiting principle anymore. And there were a handful of occasions when I did get high when I was on tour, which is probably the things I'm most ashamed of because I played bad, like catastrophically bad shows on 2 occasions because I was out of my fucking mind.
Wow.
And that bothers me and will bother me to the day I die.
Are those recorded online somewhere or no?
I don't know.
No, they're not. They're not.
Well, I'm not going to tell you which shows they were. So,
Okay.
But
so
you know,
did you feel like you did bad, or the crowd noticed you were messed up?
I thought it was self-evident.
Okay.
I don't know though.
Yeah.
After one of the
maybe
shows, some
know.
kid came up to me and told me it was his favorite show he'd ever seen in his life,
See?
and I was just like, I mean, you're wrong.
That is so funny. Wow.
But yeah, so.
Did you ever almost overdose on anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, if we again, I don't want to get too far into specifics of this, but like, overdosing on cocaine is a slightly grey area.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think about heart attack. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, a heart attack is a form of an overdose on cocaine. I never actually had a heart attack.
Like your heart get racing, getting like panic attacks.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had medical interventions. And
interventions, yeah.
I also, I mean, I on a number of occasions took enough cocaine that I started hallucinating, which is not what that drug is supposed to do. But it can be done. I wouldn't recommend it. So
yeah, I've never heard of that. That's crazy.
yeah, that's like day 6.
Day 6. So, in a sense, you could say you miss it.
It's really
maybe
easy.
the thought of it, or
there is a certain part of my brain that kind of like lights up a little bit when I tell those kinds of stories.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I think I've learned to recognize that. I think one of the things that I think everybody does at a certain, or has to do at a certain age, is learn. How best to put this? This is a function of kind of maturity. I think is putting things in their right place.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit kind of like, I did that. The good times I had with all that stuff were great, and I'm like, I did it better than any motherfucker kind of thing. And it's
the
like,
best.
but it should go there, and it shouldn't go everywhere. Do you know what I mean? There's a time and a place for everything, and like, I mean, physically, I just can't do it anymore. I'd die if I tried doing a 2-nighter. It'd fucking kill me. Do you know what I mean? But also like. Yeah, it's just there's a time and a place for everything. This just kind of goes back to what we were talking about before the podcast. There's a time and a place for people to be in young, super aggressive, like be into stuff like Turnstile. Turnstile are great,
Yeah.
and they're not for you and me in the first instance. We can get into them, and I am into them. They're great, but it's like don't fucking stand at the front with your arms folded, saying it's not as good as when you saw Sick of It All in the early '90s or whatever the fuck, man. Like fuck off, make space.
Yeah.
And it's a similar kind of vibe. Like I sort of feel like I've successfully put that kind of behavior that we're chatting about in a box that goes there.
Yeah.
And I look at it for memories, but I'm not fucking getting back in it again.
I like that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's something about that, and there's a sense of acceptance in it to a degree as well, and just sort of knowing where things go.
Yeah, because my mom was smoking like her whole entire life. Like she was like 60 years she smoked cigarettes. She quit like almost 15 years ago.
Amazing.
She still says that I miss it. I love to have a cigarette. If she sees somebody smoking a cigarette, I love to have a cigarette right now. She's never going to do it, but she has these memories.
Oh yeah,
that kind of triggers her,
funny
I guess,
actually. So cigarettes is a different thing to hard drugs, in my opinion.
You smoke cigarettes?
I did for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't anymore. I wander in and out of vaping. It makes me feel like an idiot, but I call it my
whatever works, man.
I call it my anti-murder device.
Okay.
But I mean, and I've always said, this is really interesting your mum said that, because I've always had this thing. The major reason actually that I quit smoking because it was affecting my singing voice, and this is the reason. This vocal box here is the reason I don't have to get a real job. So this motherfucker. We
talked about that earlier. Yeah, like a teacher.
And like. I've always thought that if there was any way that the universe could go ding, you can't be a singer anymore, that I would immediately buy a packet of Marlboro Lights and smoke the whole goddamn thing. There's ritualism to smoking, and like the part of the reason I was quite a heavy smoker, and the reason was
the drinking, the smoking together.
Yeah, kind of. It's more that my favorite cigarette of the day is the one before breakfast. You get up, you make a cup of coffee, you go and sit outside. And you spark up a smoke, and you take that drag, and you're just like, I'm ready for the day.
Wow.
And I love that. There was a kind of meticulousness. But I think this is true of lots of addiction, actually. Yeah. Because I had my spots where I hid my stuff. I had my methodology for doing it. I had people who I called. Do you know what I mean? There's almost a structure to it. I mean, I was never into heroin, but I know that heroin addicts are much more meticulous than this. Generally speaking, heroin addicts are extremely meticulous people. They have their kind of structure and their routine.
Yeah. Routine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm not going to say I'm never going to smoke a cigarette again. I am going to say the last time that I did smoke one, it was horrendously awful. It wasn't like I remember it being, because if you're not into it, then it's just like, bleh.
That's what I'm saying. My mom probably would never do it, but she does talk about it, and she thinks about those days of smoking. My wife is addicted to Diet Coke, but only from 7-Eleven and only with the ice machines. And we have hundreds and hundreds. People have seen me post before, hundreds of plastic Big Goat cups all over this house. I tried to have her quit. She quit for like 6 months. This is her thing. She knows every 7-Eleven in Los Angeles. She knows every homeless person, every 7-Eleven. She knows the people that work there. She gets her ice. It's a thing. She has every morning. Yeah. She gets her Diet Coke. She doesn't even finish these Big Gulps or super Big Gulps. It's routine. It's her addiction, and she loves it. And this is her thing. And it's like, it could be worse, but this is her routine every day.
I think everybody has kind of need for structure and routine to some degree. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, some people more than others, of course, but like every ex-heroin addict I know is a major gym bunny, like every single one. I mean, I don't mean to be morbid, but it's like you start taking heroin, you either end up dead or buff. Like those are your options.
Yeah, a lot of my friends who were sober, they're like, they're totally great shape now. They focus on that. Like that's the addiction. That's the adrenaline, I guess.
Exactly.
But at least it's healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait.
Are you a workout guy?
I kind of wander in and out of it. Like sometimes, yeah. I mean, to be honest, same as you, but like the shows when I'm on tour, the shows we do is enough cardio.
Great cardio.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I got really into running over the pandemic, and then we started touring again. I was trying to do runs in the morning and shows in the evening, and my body was like, "Excuse me," like no. So now,
that's hard. Yeah.
Now I tend to run when I'm not on tour. I mean, it is not the same set of muscles. But I tend to run when I'm not on tour and not when I am.
How many miles do you run usually?
I started trying to build up my distance. I mean, I tend to do it in kilometers. But like, I did like 10Ks. I did a 15K a couple of times. But if I do a 15K, I like kind of can't walk the next day, and I'd much rather do kind of like 5K and then do that 4 days a week. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, 5K is probably like 2.5 miles, 3 miles,
that's nice.
maybe.
And you were doing these, which I looked at, are pretty cool. These independent venue love. You were doing these live streams during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And playing like full album streams.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
that's awesome.
I mean, I did more live streams than was advisable. I did a lot, but it turned into this fundraiser thing for independent music venues.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And we kept 21 venues open, so that was cool. And we raised $300,000. So. Happy days.
And then you're doing the Lost Evenings Festival.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing
out here. Yeah.
Starting on Thursday in Anaheim. It's number 6, Lost Evenings 6 this year, and basically it started. A bunch of people in the UK were trying to get me to like have my own outdoor festival. Yeah. And I don't know if you know how much like toilets and trackway and fencing cost, but Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Never even thought about that.
But essentially putting on a festival in a field is really, really financially enormous. And also, like the Levelers have their own festival, 2003 festival. There's a bunch of festivals I love, independent small festivals, and it was like I'm just going to kind of copy them and thereby crowd their market, and that's a dickhead thing to do.
Yeah.
And then there's a British band called Wolf Alice. I don't know if you know Wolf Alice. They're amazing. They're old friends of mine, and their first album blew up, and they could have done a 10,000 cap on their first album tour, and they didn't want to, so instead they did 4 nights at a 2,000 cap, and with different support acts each night. And
That's cool.
And I went down to the whole thing, and I was hanging out with their manager, and he was like, "Man, it's almost like a mini festival." And I was like, "Yes, it is, and forget you just said that." Do you know what I mean? Like, fucking Jedi mind trick that shit out of his head. So that's the first one we did in 2017 at the Roundhouse in London. And we have 2 stages. We have panel discussions. We have activism. We have charities. We have, generally speaking, 7 bands a day. Or A being on the stages, and then we have like tattoo shops nearby and bars nearby and restaurants nearby kind of get involved and blah blah blah.
It's awesome.
The first
is that stressful putting that stuff on?
It is. I would say that it's more stressful for my crew than it is for me, because generally I lie on a chaise longue in a toga eating grapes and coming up with annoying ideas for my crew, and then they have to do them. May not be 100% factually accurate, but like and also like we're kind of getting into rhythm. The idea was always that it moves, so we've done it in London, Berlin, Boston, now Anaheim, and then next year. When's this going out?
Whenever you want.
Okay.
Look, you can say next year. It's fine.
Next year's going to be in Toronto.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And then we'll do other places around the world, and we'll come back to London as well before anyone from London actually tars and feathers me for not doing it in London again. Anyway, but so it's just really cool. I get to, my favorite part of it is I get to curate it. I get to pick the bands.
That's cool.
You know, so like this year we have Pedro the Lion playing, who is in my top 1 songwriters of all time.
Wow.
Like he might be my favorite songwriter.
That's awesome to have him on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never met him, and I've told all of my band and crew that they have to keep an eye on me when I'm around him because I don't want to be a total punisher.
Fanboy. Yeah.
Yeah, but I probably will be. But so we've got that. Pedro the Lion's playing. Co-Defendants are playing. We have, my mind's going blank. Chuck Reagan's on.
Oh, that's cool.
Who's an old friend. We got Destroy Boys, who are a new band who are completely amazing.
No, they're awesome.
Last Gang are playing. There's loads of people playing. Katie Tunstall's playing, which is going to be fucking rad. She's an old friend too. Micah Schnabel, who, if you're not familiar with Micah Schnabel,
I know the name.
Yeah, he was in a band called Two Cow Garage.
Okay.
He's a very dear friend of mine. He does solo stuff now. We played together last night, and he's as good as Early Dylan at his best. And I said that on a podcast.
Wow.
And I'll stand on Bob Dylan's coffee table in my cowboy boots and defend that statement.
You wear cowboy boots?
No.
Okay. And it was cool. He had a stage named after your friend Nick Alexander.
Yeah, Nick died at the Bataclan attack.
I know.
I
never met anybody who knew somebody who passed from there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so his sister and I have become good friends. We never met before he died.
Okay.
We met at the BBC because we were both on telly to discuss what had happened on the news, which was fucking weird.
That is crazy.
Nick was a good friend of mine. He was a touring friend. You know, it was increasingly time ago now. I miss that motherfucker. But the nice thing is, so Zoe and I became really good friends out of the back of that. Actually, the other really close friend I made out of that was Josh Homme, who was good friends with Nick as well. And again, we sort of met doing the kind of fundraising memorial for his charity and have become good friends. Wow.
So the festival's this week in Anaheim. Also, your other group, Sleeping Souls, just dropped a song called Rivals.
Yeah, well, so the Sleeping Souls are my E Street band, as it were. That's the way to think about it.
E Street band, nice.
Yeah, but as in, like, until literally, like, 48 hours ago, they didn't exist as an independent entity.
Wow.
I mean, obviously, I knew that this was coming. This wasn't they didn't drop... But, like, they've... My guitar tech, who I mentioned earlier, he's like one of my best friends, he was in a bunch of bands. He was in a band called Jet Plane Landing, who are, like, a legendary Irish punk band. He was in a band called Fighting With Wire, who are great. He's also in a band called New Pagans right now. All great bands. Check them out. But so, while I've been off doing interviews and shit, talking to you, they've been, you know, he picks up my guitar or picks up a guitar and goes on the mic, and they've written the record together. Wow. And I'm super pro it. I think it's super cool. And they put out a single yesterday, and there's a record coming.
That's awesome. Who's putting that out?
Extra Mile Recordings, which is the label I've been with since day one. I went through a time when we licensed on from Extra Mile to the Universal label, but I'm extremely proud of the fact that as of last year, I finished my major label deal and walked away. Didn't get fucking dropped.
Wow.
I've completed the deal.
That's pretty hard to do, too.
Yeah, they offered me an extension, and I said, "You're right, mate."
How many years are you on that one?
10 years. And
there's a life sentences on major labels, man.
They can be, and like I like to think we parted with mutual respect.
That's nice.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not regretting my time of working with a major, but it was no longer the time for me to do that. They were a little surprised that I didn't want to work with them anymore initially, but I think, like I say, I hope that we've parted on respectful terms. But I'm also proud of the fact that I took that leap. I fucking did it.
Yeah.
I survived it, and I walked away.
You survived it, yeah.
Yeah.
We were on a major label for one album, and the label went under like mid-record cycle. MCA Records. Blink was on the Newfound Glory. It just went under, and it merged with somebody else, and we got let go. It was so lucky. It was like 5 or 6 album deal, man, back then.
Yeah. I did a 5-album deal and finished it.
Remember when people like got so bummed what label you're on, like, and then
it's funny. It feels like the last war somehow, almost. You know what I mean? It's like I remember. So I'm kind of medium good friends with Ian Mackay these days, which is a wonderful thing because he's the Pope of punk rock.
Yeah, he's the best.
I love him to pieces. He's a lovely guy, but like, it's almost become a running joke now that like every time he's always like, hit me over when you're in DC, but he won't go to Live Nation venues, which I respect.
I love that.
But it's like we play Live Nation venues here and there, particularly like the Fillmore in Silver Spring. He's like, not coming.
Man, we're playing there in a couple weeks with Suicidal and Judge. I know.
Or at least if he does come, I'm going to be offended.
Yeah.
But then,
Amanda's coming. That's my homie.
There we go.
Okay.
But it was kind of funny because like,
damn, it's Live Nation.
we kept going around. And I kept hitting him up, and he kept being like, "I'm not coming." And then
I love him for that.
Yeah,
though,
no.
man.
And we'd go and like have a coffee and hang out or whatever.
Legit punk rock for real.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because like there's no part of me that's ever going to disrespect Ian MacKaye, but again, I sort of slightly felt like, dude, that's the last war. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't love, nobody fucking loves Live Nation, Master, all that sort of business. But it's like I've worked with them here and there in my career, and it's been annoying. But it's also, you get to play the better venues and that kind of thing. Sure, because they have a stranglehold in the market. But like, guess what? Pearl Jam spent a decade trying to fight that and lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm not sure that, call me a coward, I'm not sure I'm the guy who's going to fight that war.
Yeah, but I still respect the fact that he won't.
Oh my God,
and he's still the exact same person that he's always been, and like,
yeah.
He's everything punk rock. I mean, it's just
totally, absolutely, yeah. God
it's
bless
like,
him.
I mean, is there anybody else like that, walking and living and breathing, that turned down millions of dollars for records deals, still has the Discord house? Just, dude, it's just.
Yeah, he's a shining example for sure.
And like meeting him and knowing him after looking up to him and sending him postcards in the 80s, and him being everything you want him to be and more. Doing those walkthroughs, I'm sure you've done many times through Discord.
Yeah.
Here's the Minor Threat lyrics for Straight Edge. Here's the sheep drawing. Just everything's just there. Like the skateboard it's unreal, man.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And even just like having to write him, even just knowing as a friend and somebody that I've hung out with, I know Amanda really well. Just to write him an email, just like writing those emails, I'm just always getting I'm just a person, just writing the emails to him. I send it off to him, just like, totally. This is going to him. Like, this dude, like, changed my life at 13 years old forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
completely. And he's
just
a
person
lovely
just
guy.
like you. No pun intended. But you know what I mean, though?
I do.
And that's good. And like, that's your friend. It's like.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And he's a sweet guy. It's funny. The day I met him, I met Henry Rollins and Ian MacKaye on the same day in the same room. And I'm like.
What?
Henry was very nice, but he was quite sort of like.
Not standoffish, but just kind of.
Yeah. And then I sort of got a photo taken. And then Ian was like. Could see that it was getting a little awkward, and Ian was like, "Do you want to go record shopping?" And I was like, "Yes." And then this is like 4 or 5 years ago, so we were introduced as two artists, kind of thing, by a promoter, like at a festival, sort of thing.
Okay.
And Ian was like, "Hey man, I'm going record shopping. Do you want to come with?" So I'm going record shopping with Ian fucking MacKaye.
The first time you meet him?
Yeah. So we're in Ithaca, New York, in this like indie record store, and he's like flicking through dub acetates or something super cool, and I'm standing there like a fucking prick, just being like, what am I gonna buy when I'm hanging out with Ian MacKaye? You know what the answer to that question is? A fucking Fugazi record.
No way.
Because which I already own, but it was like, I'm gonna get him to sign it because I don't know if I'm ever gonna fucking hang out.
Was he cool about signing it?
Yeah, it's completely.
That is so awesome.
And then we've hung out loads since, so now I feel like even more of a prick. But the point was, I was just like, would you mind? And he was like, nah, you're right, whatever.
Obviously you've been to Discord House.
Yeah. It's crazy.
You see, Glennie Freeman has a new Minor Threat book coming out.
Really?
Out here, they're having a big thing for it, man. And Zach is going to be hosting it that night out here.
No shit.
Like, I'm super excited. Every time I go to Discord or talk to him or see him, I still, even though he's I can say he's my friend too as well, but like, I still get like, not starstruck and not like this was a role model. I don't know. It's just kind of surreal sometimes.
I know, of course.
And I know people that are really close with it tell me the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
he's definitely got a kind of like
aura.
An aura. Are we going to say aura? We
yeah.
were both about to say the word aura.
But it's awesome. It's like.
But there's a funny thing in here because like, I mean, I've been fortunate in my life in many ways, and one of the ways is that like I've ended up being friends with a lot of people who I grew up looking up to.
Same.
And I think that I'm sort of, there's a balance to be struck because you don't want to spend your whole fucking life going, Jesus Christ, around somebody who you're friends with. But I also don't want to lose that sense I had when I was a kid as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and whoever
I know what you're saying though.
Milo from Descendants or
yeah.
like,
for me, Kevin Seconds, man. Like,
yeah, you know, and just like, you don't want to every single time you see them be like, oh my God.
Geek out on them, yeah.
But you also don't want to be blasé about
but
it.
Humanize. They're humans. They're people. It's
totally. But I want to retain some of that sense of wonder, I guess is what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? Is it's like, so like...
yeah, it's really true.
You know, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like John, I don't know if you know John K. Samson. He's a Canadian songwriter. He was in The Weaker Thans. He was in Propaganda back in the day.
Oh, Propaganda, no, yeah.
He's my other favorite songwriter of all time. And we've done a bunch of shows together now. count him as a friend and everything. And like, if I'm ever in Winnipeg, we'll have lunch together and hang out. And he's just a good dude. But every time we part ways, I just walk around the corner and go,
yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, and that's it. That's it. That's enough.
We appreciate it so much because it's like, I don't know. I think it's just awesome, dude.
But that's it. You don't want to be one of those people who's just like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm hanging out with so-and-so.
It's just hard not to take a picture on the steps every time you go there, though.
Yeah, of
every
course.
time I go, those moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there somebody that like you would love to meet you haven't met in your life?
I met Nick Cave very briefly.
Wow.
We were both in the same kind of studio complex. I was mastering records, and he just popped his head around the door and said hello, and was very, very lovely and polite. I recently got my "What Would Nick Cave Do" tattoo on my hand. I'm like terminally obsessed with Nick Cave as an artist and as a human, and I think that the work he's been doing in recent years, his new book with Sean O'Hagan, was one of the more impactful books I've read in recent years. I would recommend it.
Okay.
He does a thing called Red Hand Files. Do you know about Red Hand Files? He got bored of doing interviews. Doesn't do interviews anymore. What he does is twice a week he replies to a letter from a fan. And you sign up on an email and you get it. Go to redhandfiles.com and twice a week you get an email with Nick Cave answering someone's question.
Wow.
And that's it. And I recommend
How cool is that?
And he writes with grace and poise and humor and caustic wit when required. But he has this kind of like sense of kind of like empathy for the human condition that is like, and like he's become a religious man later in his life in a way that I don't personally identify with, but it's not, that's no obstacle to kind of what he's saying. He talks about, you know, all of us being frail, broken individuals who are trying to figure out what the fuck we're doing on this planet and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then plus, I mean, I thought that Ghosteen, that record, was just such an unfucking believable piece of art. I'm not aware of, and when everyone makes sweeping statements of these kinds, you got to be sort of like have the sort of humility to recognize that you might just not know. But I'm not aware of anybody else who's operating on making that kind of art at that level in the world right now, in my opinion. And like, I love his early stuff with the noisy, borderline incoherent sort of post-rock shit.
Yeah.
The Blitzer Bargeld years. I fucking love the kind of rock and roll years, the kind of abattoir blues and all that kind of thing, when suddenly he's wearing a suit and a quiff and he's cool as fuck. and then this kind of new, almost kind of ambient phase he's in right now.
Yeah.
But it's all dealing with the death of his son.
Yes.
And all that kind of thing. I just think it's he fills the hole that was left when Leonard Cohen died for me, because I think Leonard Cohen was arguably the greatest songwriter of the 20th century. And like, I just think it's a privilege to be alive at the same time as someone like that is putting out records.
Wow. How old is Nick Cave?
He's in his 60s at a guess.
He's got more than one. He had a kid that passed, and he has another kids too, right?
He's had, as far as I know, he had 3 kids and 2 of them died.
Wow.
In separate circumstances.
Well, whatever kid is alive at this moment, he takes him to my wife works at a famous skate park.
Huh.
And he goes there with his kid.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
Yeah,
She's like, oh, Nick Cave came here today.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting story about Nick Cave. You're probably not going to like it. Nick Cave was eating lunch with Chris Martin from Coldplay at my friend's restaurant, Crossroads. I'm walking in. He's walking out with him. I don't really know who Nick Cave is, so I do know now.
Yeah,
I'm a poser. I thought he was Rick Ocasek from the Cars because I'm a moron. And there's a black SUV waiting outside. And I just, literally, Chris Martin opens the door for me. I look down. I was like, I had to say something to him. You know, show my tats, got a photo. I turn around and Nick Cave's just standing all in black, just standing there. I'm like, I didn't even know who really it was. And then once I told my friends, they flipped on me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was Nick Cave with Chris Martin. That combination's kind of crazy. And you didn't say
they're
anything.
really good friends. It's a weird one.
Okay, so you know about this.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, they've talked about it in interviews and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was such a crazy combo.
Yeah, totally. Well, people say that, and Nick Cave's just like, I don't give a fuck, man. Like,
No, I love that too.
Yeah, totally.
Jay-Z's super tight with Chris Martin as well.
Wow. Yeah.
Fuck, man, this is awesome conversation. I'm so psyched right now. You have to go pee or anything? You're good.
No, I possibly need. I've got to.
How soon?
Soonish.
Okay.
Let's say that.
Okay, let's fast forward then. Okay.
We'll be here all day.
I know because
but, I mean that was a compliment.
I know because you
like,
do the
we're
right to
getting
die,
on.
the assisted living thing, the assisted dying thing is so.
Oh yeah, I must admit. I mean, I've done less with that in recent years, not because I've sort of gone off the idea or anything, but just it hasn't been.
Okay.
My.
But you used to do that
focus.
stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really like incredible. But yeah, not anymore. We talked earlier about listening to like new music and new hardcore stuff like that. You kind of listen to like stuff you know.
I try and listen to new stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the more invigorating things for me in recent years is that I've set up my own studio to produce other people. Like
that's cool.
And I moved out of London to Essex, and there's a really cool Essex punk scene and folk scene, and I've sort of been producing a lot of kind of younger, newer bands, and it's fucking awesome, and it's a really good way of rekindling your interest in new music.
Totally.
There's nothing more cliche than the old dickhead who says something like rock music's over, and it's like, I think you mean that you're over.
True.
Like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and there's just I've been producing some cool bands, Pet Needs, The Meffs, Ben Brown, who else have been doing? My brain's going blank, but there's just I've been producing a lot of really, really cool bands from my studio at home, and it's really fucking exciting being in the studio with a band who are making their first record,
and they're excited too.
And your job is to guide them through the process. That's been really, I feel like it's been important for me as a writer as well, because it brings a bit of piss and vinegar back into my own stuff.
So it inspires you as well. Yeah. Do you have major regrets in your life?
Oh fuck yeah! I think people who say they have no regrets are either like dumb or like or lying, essentially, or possibly sociopaths. Those are the options. But like, I mean, like, of course I do. I mean, fuck me. Like, you know, the like the shower thoughts, the bits where or the 3 a.m. thoughts where you wake up and you go, oh fuck, and it can be anything from like this dumb thing. I know this isn't quite what you're asking about, but like the other day I've asked. I forgot who the guitarist in Shikari was. I knew him. I saw him. I thought he was a crew guy. And I said, who are you here with today? This is at Riot Fest. And he was like, Shikari. And we hung out like a month ago. And I was just tired. And I just felt like such a prick. And he's such a nice guy. And his band are so good. And it was just like, oh, well, fuck you then. Like, to myself.
It happens.
But you know, I mean, fuck yeah. I mean, there are... I mean, I don't think you can be an addict and not have regrets. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
No, for sure.
And yeah, I mean,
this experience,
man, I've got shitloads of regrets, man. Jesus Christ.
Are you an optimist or pessimist?
I like to think I'm a pessimist, but I'm secretly an optimist.
Okay.
I think part of me thinks it was cooler to be a pessimist, but I'm not actually a pessimist. I'm an optimist.
Yeah. You're a pretty happy person.
Well, I'm not sure I'd say that. That's a slightly different thing. I mean,
I guess you're right. Yeah,
I have my ups and downs.
But you like to try to stay positive and focus on the good things.
I think the word focus is a good one. Like, I think that like if I'm going to choose what to spend my time thinking about, singing about, it would, to the extent that one has choice over those things, I try and focus on the positive things.
Yeah, but you never gave up on yourself doing music in your career. Even when people were telling you couldn't do it or you shouldn't be doing it, you should be doing this. You continue to grind and work hard and get where you're at.
Yeah,
and believe in yourself. And part of PMA is what the mind can't conceive and believe it can achieve.
Right,
do you know
and
what
it's
I mean?
interesting you mentioned PMA. I mean, I put out a record called Positive Songs, Negative
People. Yeah,
and
that's
like
awesome.
Part of that was just a little nod to kind of 8/8 hardcore. Do you know what I mean? And like Youth of Today or whatever. Yeah, very select few people got that.
No, I love that. I love that title. What about ever having kids? You ever own kids?
It's unlikely.
Okay.
And the deeper answers to that are gonna stay.
Okay,
on the down low.
And then what about some daily rituals you have?
Oh, daily rituals. I mean, you know, I'm a reasonably routine and structured kind of guy.
Coffee for sure. We talked about.
Yeah. I think one of the things I tend to do, if I don't read 50 pages of the book I'm currently reading a day, I feel like I get annoyed.
Wow. I like that.
So right now I'm reading the second volume of John Julius Norwich's History of the Byzantine Empire, which I've actually read before, but I read it like 20 years ago. And it's such an insane and underappreciated bit of history. It's also a very entertainingly written book, and I'd recommend it. But you know, I mean, some days I'll read 100 pages, 200 pages, whatever. But like, I've got to read 50 pages in a day.
I love that.
Or else I get kind of stressed out.
And you saw my wife's puzzle. You're a puzzle guy too?
So I am a puzzle guy. I mean, I kind of slightly try and keep myself away from them. But like at Christmas.
Oh yeah, Christmas.
Family Christmas puzzles come out. But I mean, when I'm on tour, my ritual is I talk to my wife. We have a thing. We always text when we wake up, text when we go to sleep. We talk to each other a lot.
Yeah. And then one story you told me real quick. We were eating at our green table. Your Earth Crisis story. You tell the story. I think it was awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, you know what? I'm gonna go back to my hotel room in a minute and listen to some Earth Crisis because it's been a minute. I was big into Earth Crisis. They were playing the Underworld. This is in roughly 1999 at a guess. I crowd surfed onto the stage, and I fucked it up because I landed as they finished a song, which is a terrible faux pas, we all know. And Carl just kind of pulled me to my feet and shoved the mic in my hand and was like, "Off you go, boy." And they started playing Gomorrah's Season Ends, and I sung quite all of, but sort of a large chunk of Gomorrah's Season Ends with Earth Crisis.
And you had X's on your feet too, right?
I had a pair of trainers that I'd drawn X's on.
I love that, man.
Yeah, there are still people who I encounter once in a blue moon who used to go to hardcore shows in the 90s in London who are like, you can't be the kid who had the X's on his shoes.
No
right?
way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every now and again.
And then what was your last real job where you had a boss?
That's a fucking great question. I mean, there's a part of me that would say that my tour manager is my boss because I fucking do what she tells me to do.
Yeah.
But to answer your question in the spirit it's intended, I don't know. It was probably telesales, actually.
Okay, telemarketing.
Telemarketing. Yeah.
What year would that be? 2000?
2004 was the last time I did another job other than.
It's pretty amazing, man.
Music. Yeah, I mean, it's the most amazing thing. It's been 19 years I've been making a living out of music. I'm fucking proud of that.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of times when people talk about kids quite often ask about making it and all this kind of thing, and it's like, what the fuck are you?
What does that mean?
Define it. Actually, funnily enough, somebody asked me a question about making it. There's this radio DJ from Portsmouth in the UK, and I was like, no one gives you a badge that says you've made it at a certain point. And the next time he interviewed me about a year later, he gave me a badge with "You've made it" written on it, which was very good of him.
That's incredible.
He's a funny guy. He's a nice guy. But like,
there's no retirement in this. There's no like, at least medical insurance. There's no 401k.
The whole thing of like not having to do anything else is such a huge privilege.
It's incredible.
And if you can land there by hook or by crook, then doing what you love for a living. I mean, fuck, man.
Yeah, we're lucky to do that, man. We're really lucky.
Insanely lucky.
And we worked hard to do it, and
totally. I also think it's really, and I try really hard to be humble about my claims for what I do. I'm not a surgeon or a nurse or indeed a teacher or anything like that.
Same.
If I stopped doing what I was doing tomorrow, the world would keep turning. Do you know what I mean? There'd be some people who might be bummed out, but nobody's going to physically hurt because I don't fucking play my guitar anymore. It's important to keep that in mind. I fucking love what I do. I'm proud of the way in which I do it and the length of time that I've done it for. But it's like, I guess part of this is like, there's nothing so annoying as a musician who thinks that what they do is important to like world peace or world happiness or some shit like this. It's like, fuck off, man. Like, there's another 10 people standing behind you. Get out
but you have changed people's lives and saved people's lives and helped people in so many ways, whether you know it or not. Your music has.
The thing about that, right, is that like I would say that of plenty of musicians with regard to myself, as in what we were talking about with Ian Mackay or whatever. I find it difficult to direct that thought at myself from somebody else's perspective. Do you know what I mean? And in a way, I feel like if I didn't find that difficult, that would be proof that I had disappeared up my own ass. So it's kind of, in a way, I try not to think about it very much. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'm giving you your flowers while you're here.
Okay, thank you.
You know what I mean? Well, dude, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, this is awesome. You came from the airport. You have shows this weekend, and hope to hang with you again soon next time you're in Los Angeles. Man. And yeah, man. So people can find you on social. Are you on social media talking to people, answering your messages?
No, because I answer my emails.
Okay, only emails.
I have my email address on my website. If you want to get in touch, send me an email. I'll write back to you in 24 hours.
So social media, not checking messages?
No, it's a broadcast tool for me. And it didn't used to be that way, and it was catastrophically bad for my mental health. So
you took a social media break.
I post on social media all the time, but it's a broadcast tool. Like I said, it's not a conversation tool.
I like that.
And the thing is, like, I And then part of the reason for that is when people have conversations on social media, it's performative. If you want to have a conversation with me as one human being to another, I'll do that.
I love
I've got
that.
my email address out there. I'll talk to anyone about anything. I don't give a fuck. But like, if you want to like, you know, show off essentially whilst talking to me, fuck off, man. I'm not interested. Like, and you know, there's information on my social media about the things that I'm doing, well, and quite often about things that I like that I want to big up or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this morning, I did a post about the songwriter I just mentioned, Michael Schnabel. I was like, hey, everyone, listen to this guy. He's fucking great. And then tomorrow, I'm going to do some Showtimes posts for Lost Evenings and blah, 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 blah. But if you want to actually communicate, then my email address is on my website and it doesn't get filtered. It comes to me.
That's incredible, man. It's the first part. Yeah, like you put it out there, it's broadcast, and that's it. It's not like...
Yeah,
not for discussion. It's not for
I tried to get into social media and it made me want to fucking hang myself. It was awful. I fucking hate what Twitter has done to our discourse.
Wow.
Yeah, and if the end result of what Elon Musk, whatever the fuck it is Elon Musk is doing right now, is that he shuts Twitter down, I'm going to buy him a fucking beer because he'll be doing the world a service.
Yes.
And fuck Threads. Don't fucking get on. The way that, sorry, this has got nothing to do with anything.
No,
when they launched Threads and everyone was like, it's a new thing, it reminded me of
shit.
nothing so much as friends of mine who'd found a new drug dealer when the old one's gear had started getting a bit too chopped up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're still on drugs.
Yeah, I'm fucking with Threads, yeah.
And it's just like, oh, Twitter's got bad. But now there's Threads. It's just like, it's still fucking rotting your brain. Get the fuck off Twitter.
It is. You read a book like you do.
Yeah, read a fucking book.
I like when Dave Chappelle said last year, I heard them mad at me on Twitter. He's like, thankfully, Twitter's not a real place.
Oh.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love separating the reality. That's like not reality.
Yeah.
It's just...
Well, I had plenty of times of getting monstered on social media, and the smartest thing anyone ever said to it was my big sister got a fucking map book out and said, point to me on this map where this is happening. I hadn't slept for like a week, not because of drugs, because of stress, because of being fucked off. And she was like,
because of online shit, you mean?
Yeah. I get
wow.
it. For this, that, and the other, some bullshit. You know, people have a go about
I hate
anything.
it too, man.
And my big sister said, point to me on this map where this thing that is upsetting you is taking place. And I was like, well, I can't do that. And she was like, exactly, motherfucker. That's a great way to end this podcast. That is incredible, man.
Yeah.
The other thing she said, she was like, turn your phone off and leave it, because I was at her house. She was like, turn your phone off and leave it in here and walk to the shops and do a shop and come back again and tell me how many people you walk past give a fuck about whatever it is you're arguing about on the internet right now. And the answer was 0.
I fucking love that. And one more thing I'll say is all the things people say about people on the internet, they would never say it to your face in real life. And half those people are still coming to see you perform. They're still supporting. They're still following you. It's crazy. Yeah. We're going to do a part 2 someday.
Yes, we are. I'm going to check on that right now. It's terrible podcasting, but...
Dude, thank you so much, man.
Pleasure, man.
This is great. Bye, everybody. I always ask my guests if they have any regrets. I personally don't have any regrets. Even when it comes to my tattoos. I have the silliest tattoos. Even my ET on my leg, it's still a childhood memory for me, and I love it. I've had tattoos on top of tattoos strictly because I wanted more tattoos. I started getting tattoos when I was 18. I'm 52 now, and I can't stop. I've had laser treatment before on something on my arm. It's 4 tattoos on top of each other. And that experience at that place was pretty fast. It was pretty cold. It was in and out, swipe the credit card. Don't really tell me much. Didn't give me much details or anything was going to happen. So I never went back. So as of most recently, I'm so lucky enough to have had 2 sessions at Removery Tattoo Removal. My tattoo on my arm that looks like a big black blob is now super light. I've had 2 sessions. I have a long road ahead of me. None of this stuff happens overnight. You cannot take a tattoo up in one sitting. You have to be patient. And it's painful. They ice you up. It's super fast. To me, it felt like a bunch of rubber bands. But what's more painful than that is looking at something on your body that you think you're stuck with for the rest of your life. That sucks. But now for me, I'm really happy I started this journey. I'm slowly going to get this tattoo removed. I never thought in a million years I have any kind of real estate on my arm. I don't even know what I want, but it's exciting. I'm so honored to announce that One Life, One Chance podcast is now with Removery. I have a code. Use TobyH20 and get $100 off your first session. Call 866-934-4570 or go to Removery.com. One of the most experienced tattoo removal companies in the world. Over 600,000 removal treatments done. 100 locations, U.S., Canada, and Australia. State-of-the-art peak-away laser technology, cryotechnology to reduce any discomfort. This is so exciting for me because all I do in these podcasts is talk about tattoos. From day one, if you've been listening to this podcast, talk about tattoos, talk about getting removed, talk about getting covered up. So this is such a perfect fit for me. Once again, go to Removery.com or call 866-934-4570. Use my code TobyH20 and get $100 off. These guys are located everywhere. Try it out.